Let's take a moment and appreciate this beautiful mockingbird that has been singing up a storm.
So guys, before we begin, this is the obligatory have you liked and or subscribed yet thingy that YouTubers say.
If you haven't already, like and subscribe to this video. It helps get our content out there. It helps us get wider reach. It helps us get into people's recommended feed.
It tells YouTube that this is the type of content you would like to watch. For you kids that were born in like the 2000s or whatever, this is what we call derivative of a show from the early 1990s called Full House.
And Saved by the Bell. Mm-hmm. You know, if anyone on Saved by the Bell had been vegan, it would have been Jesse Spano. Who agrees? Mm-hmm. So this has happened to us. Has it happened to you? Perhaps you're meeting someone for the first time at a gathering, a party, or you're introduced by a friend as the vegan, or you're wearing your cool vegan swag that you purchased from our Etsy store. This person you're meeting might excitedly reply, "Oh, you're vegan? I'm vegetarian." Hear us out. We're not here to create division. We're just here to highlight some importances.
We've talked about vegetarians on our channel several times in the past, but we felt like this week we wanted to talk about this phenomenon, where often vegetarians immediately ally themselves with you, the vegan in the group. On one hand, we understand where they're coming from. They probably think, this person doesn't eat meat, I don't eat meat. So we have something in common.
Which is true. Vegetarians do not eat animal flesh, and vegans do not eat animal flesh. The difference that we want to highlight is that being vegetarian is a dietary choice. The choice to omit the consumption of animal flesh from one's diet. But a vegetarian can still participate in many forms of animal cruelty, such as most likely the consumption of dairy, eggs, sometimes fish, and maybe even the wearing of leather or wool or silk or fur, and financially supporting places like aquariums and zoos, purchasing non-cruelty-free products, etc., etc., etc.
Veganism, on the other hand, is not a dietary choice. Veganism is, by definition, an ethical stance against animal cruelty and exploitation. So yes, if one were to follow a vegan lifestyle, it would entail not consuming animal flesh. But it would also follow that you would not consume, support, or fund any other industry that needlessly exploits and kills animals. While vegetarians and vegans have this one trait in common, vegetarians actually have more traits in common with other diets that people generally do not associate with vegetarianism. Paleo dieters, for example, do not consume dairy, but they do consume animal flesh and eggs. Vegetarians do not consume animal flesh, but they do consume dairy and eggs. Both diets only omit one of the three main sources of animal exploitation in the food industry. So even though vegans and vegetarians often get grouped together in the same category, vegans and vegetarians have less in common than most people assume.
Let's take a look at why these differences are significant. If you are new to this channel or new to the topic of veganism, maybe you're unaware, for example, that in the dairy industry, mother cows, because remember, cows do not produce milk because they're cows, they produce milk because they're mothers. Mother cows who no longer produce enough milk to be financially viable to dairy farmers are sent to the very same slaughterhouse that cows raised for beef are sent to. They're coming from a dairy farm.
From the auctions.
From the auctions. And they're spent?
Yeah, these that don't produce anymore, so they come to the slaughter. But right now I'm gonna take them to the dairy and then they bring them back.
You're taking them to the dairy farm and then they bring them back to the slaughterhouse. This only makes sense for the dairy farmer, as it would cost more money to keep the cow alive and not producing milk than it would be to simply sell her to the meat industry for that last little bit of money that the industry deems she is worth. This is standard industry practice, kind of like selling a totaled car for parts. You can't efficiently use the car anymore without it costing you more than it's worth, and the dairy farmer can't use the cow anymore without her costing him more than she's worth.
Also standard in the dairy industry is the slaughter of baby male cows shortly after they are born. Don't forget, only females can produce milk. so male cows in the dairy industry are largely worthless. They will allow a few of them to reach adulthood so they can sexually abuse them for their sperm and forcibly inseminate more female cows, but the majority are killed for what we casually call veal, which is just a euphemism for dead baby cow, and calfskin leather, which is strangely much less euphemistic. It's literally the skin of a calf.
This is also true for eggs, which many folks surprisingly fight to keep in their diets under the false assumption that the egg industry does not lead to the death of chickens. This couldn't be further from the truth. Our own Jackie, whom we rescued straight off of a slaughter truck on what was supposed to be the day of her execution, she was genetically bred to be an egg layer. However, at around the age of 6 months, she stopped laying enough eggs to be financially viable to the egg farmer. So she was sent to slaughter. At the very same slaughterhouse, as a matter of fact, where thousands of broiler chickens raised for meat, are murdered every day, female and male.
And just as male cows will never produce milk, male chickens will never lay eggs, so they are largely useless to the egg industry. Once again, egg farmers might allow a few males to mature to ensure they have a constant supply of egg-laying hens, but it is standard practice in the egg industry that the day baby chicks are hatched, they are sorted and separated by their sex, also known as sexing. Females will continue on into the egg industry. Males will be either placed on a conveyor belt that dumps them into a macerator or a grinder, or they will be gassed to death, or they will be left to suffocate in trash bags. All of this is standard egg industry practice. This is not additional cruelty to the animals because farmers are cruel people. This is just what needs to happen to keep eggs financially profitable and filling grocery store shelves for human consumption.
As so many vegan activists before us have said, the egg industry is the meat industry. The dairy industry is the meat industry. Just because you don't directly consume animal flesh doesn't mean that you don't directly fund it. In fact, you could even argue that the egg and dairy industries are worse, because not only are animals killed for their flesh, they are also enslaved and exploited for their reproductive abilities. Remember, the dairy and egg industries are industries of female exploitation and infanticide.
Now, does that mean we're saying that you should be rude, dismissive, or discouraging towards vegetarians? Do we hate vegetarians? No, of course not. Obviously, we understand the reason why vegetarians and vegans get grouped together. In a society like ours, where carnism is the standard, anyone taking steps to reduce animal exploitation is seen as the other.
Of course we have compassion for vegetarians, especially those who are trying to do the right thing. We're vegan, after all. We have compassion for many, many, many groups of sentient beings. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be honest about the demand we're placing on the market and the necessary practices of the industries we support. If you consume dairy and eggs, you are supporting the needless murder of animals for meat. It is just a reality of the animal ag industry.
So if you've made the choice to go vegetarian for ethical reasons, no judgment, by the way, that's why we went vegetarian in the first place, and you're serious about not wanting to see animals killed for food, consider this. Now, what can happen is we get resistance from vegetarians who argue that they're already doing enough, and we get resistance from vegans who want to be encouraging of vegetarians because at least they've taken the step of cutting meat out of their diet. The question is, when presented with new information, are you willing to align your actions with your stated values? Or will you grasp for justifications?
Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please let us know in the comments below. Were you once a vegetarian and are now vegan? And what got you there? What ultimately led you to make the decision to go vegan? Do you have vegetarians in your life? Do you get frustrated that they're not taking that extra step? And do you think it's harmful to the movement to be enabling of vegetarianism? Let us know.
As always, we want to say a huge thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much. Those of you who support the channel, we really appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel or you've been watching us for a while and you like the channel, you like what we have to say, if you want to support us, the Patreon link is down below.